Imagine having the experience of an ecologist or a naturalist or someone who studies plants and animals, native or endemic flora and fauna, and they also happen to be Chamorro. What do they do with this sort of information? Imagine this person finally gets hired to a really wonderful, prominent nonprofit organization that advocates for the protection of our land, sea, sky, and culture. The cultural knowledge is integrated alongside it. So imagine this person coming in from an academic standpoint, and then they get into this organization that has a lot of indigenous knowledge to be learned. So we're taking information from academics over to culture. Time passes, and with this organization, they begin to learn more about their culture. They're healing their upbringing and how it correlates with the land. This person is able to gain more knowledge about the land while they're in their organization. They learn about their personal relationship with plants, the experiences that they've had with each and every endemic plant that they find throughout their journey. And they look at these magnificent ecosystems, these limestone forests, and the watersheds, and they're like, my goodness. So imagine this person, their time in this organization progresses, and they recognize almost every endemic plant. Endemic meaning it's been here, a part of the ecosystem on Guam for thousands of years. And they recognize each plant, and they feel a sense of belonging and connection to the land. They look at these plants and they realize, wow, these are the same plants that my ancestors got to look at. And it's still here today, despite everything that Guam and our people and our culture and language has been through. A sense of pride and spirit swells within this person's essence, their life force, and they begin to resonate further and further with the information that Chamorros had alongside their academic knowledge. So they spend much more time in nature, and in turn we will talk about how this person has healed their life through nature. This is an episode for how Earth can fill us with awe and gratitude and all of the above and beyond feelings that we're really looking for in our everyday grind. Half a day, this is Tori Manley on Fanatsu. So in this episode, we're going to understand further the kinships that bond us between peoples and the land. Once we identify the overabundance of life on land and give it acknowledgement, just like this person that we will be interviewing, Tihu has acknowledged, we give it acknowledgement, as we said, respect, signs of kinship, signs that really say we are brethren, we are family, and we will take care of you because you have taken care of us and our people for such a long time. So with that kind of mindset, we can only benefit. We can slowly begin to shift our lives towards sustainable living.
Okay, my name is Tihu Lujan. I'm from Talafofo. I am a proud environmental nonprofit worker, uniting communities in our native limestone jungles and learning about our native plants and connecting with all that keeps us well and grounded and centered. And I'm here to talk about creating a balanced ecosystem of living. I have always been an outdoors person, avid hiker since high school. Always wanted to get outdoors and explore our island more. So I'd go hiking, honestly, 2, 3 times a week, with a couple of my buddies, in our first year of college. I was a journalist for some time, in which I also wrote a weekly hiking column. Spots on the Rock was published into a hiking trail book. This was back in 2016, and honestly, my crowning achievement to this day is just sharing those parts of our island with our people. And um, you know, we're going to talk about how a lot of those spaces have helped create mental wellness for me, a source of mental wellness and inspiration for me. The more we embrace the natural world around us, and feel all the things that humans are meant to feel, I think the more we come to know ourselves. If you know, and if you're listening to this, you probably do know the mystical powers of sitting in nature,
Mm-hmm.
then I encourage you to do it more. And
Yeah.
if you don't know those mystical powers yet, I encourage you to do it at all. You don't have to do anything together nowadays. You only do
Yeah.
things with your family, your friends, and you work. But
That's
how
it.
often do we do community things?
As humans, we already know what spaces are to gather and which spaces aren't. And like it's places where we feel safe and we feel like we're home outside of our home.
I don't know that that's a problem or that we want more people to join these things or that
We want
that's
more people to
needed,
join these things.
right?
It
But
is
it's
needed.
like, but I'm also like, what does life without community look like? And so I just don't think it's in our nature to take up space or to like enter
Mm.
any space and feel like we're hot shit or worth
Or we're
anything.
valid.
Very recently that I've felt like I have every right to be anywhere.
Fuck yeah.
So that really struck me, that conversation with Tihu. Tihu, who is this wonderful, beautiful light doing really good work in his personal life and Tanu Tasi Zantodu. And he feels the need to be the smallest thing in the room. And I've noticed that that seems to be a very common sort of genetic understanding for people who consider themselves Chamorro, people who are colonized, people who are indigenous. They feel like they are not worth the space, and I honestly have no idea why. But let's explore that just a little bit as a barrier of powerlessness. I honestly believe that the barrier of powerlessness is a huge contributing factor as to why we are losing a ton of endemic species incredibly rapidly. And people like Tihu, other scientists, and community members and community organizers are doing their absolute peachy perky best to make it happen. Make sure that we have the endemic plants that coincided with our ancestors to live on as freely as we may one day live on. Barrier of powerlessness. So imagine in our tomorrow society, even during our Western time, how many times have you heard someone say that we could never gain independence? That there's just this sort of why should I? Because no, 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 no. They seem to put themselves into this very constrictive feeling bubble of hopelessness and despair. And we see it quite often either. Let's say it's an auntie who has so many different tasks and she feels overwhelmed that she just doesn't want to do it anymore. Or even with procrastination, there is a sort of feeling where you're like, oh, I really don't want to do this because it feels really painful and you have no idea why sometimes. And I really think that it is because of an overwhelming sense of powerlessness. Whew. Breathe that in. So, this is a sort of disorder, a dis-ease within our tomorrow society, our identity, and how we interact with our endemic plants. We are in a time where we have a very Americanized view, and they really shape our actions, how we see things, how we value different members within our community of life. And we need to be able to shake off the belief that we may never gain independence. We need to shake off the belief that our island is doomed, and in case it gets bombed or sink, then, oh well, I guess we're dying. We don't want that feeling anymore. And that is also what this episode is about. Knowing what is your personal idea of what is successful? What brings you out of this despair? Why, why are you in despair? Tihu, why did you feel like you needed to be the smallest thing in the room when you definitely deserve to take up space in any room that you're in?
So these are different. Overcoming powerlessness is a kind of interaction with ourselves and the world around us and how we view things. It's taking apart systems that really get their rocks off of domination, power, and control. And in order for us to feel that sort of liberated sense of hope and taking apart the feeling of despair, we need to understand what lies at the root of this despair and this hopelessness. Whether it's for our endemic species or in our everyday life, why do we feel so unable to act sometimes? And would there be another way that could be possible, something that is tangible that you could see or you could at least hope and dream for? So, the definition of powerless is something within us that prevents us from realizing the fullness of both our power from within and our power with others, with our ability to connect and act with others. And this includes our community of life, our endemic plants. So
It's hard for some people. I
it's
can imagine to
hard.
take up space. I mean, that's 100% me, which is crazy because it's like I've always usually been the larger thing in the room. But it's like I've always felt in like inside like the need to be the smallest thing in the room.
Someone literally just needs to come up to you, rip away those vines, and be like, hey, are you okay? Like, holy shit, there's sunlight. What the fuck? Thanks. Holy crap, this place is a mess. It's a disaster here. I'm ready to grow now. Thanks.
Right.
Oh, and putting your intention in your work, but also unlearning your hurt and like giving what you can.
Local culture is very much community, which is
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, but it's absolutely not individualistic. There's no
Mm-hmm.
importance on any individual.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of beauty and harmony, of course, in community, which we strive for. But at the same time, at least in my life, I sometimes I feel like I've just been reborn again within the last year. You don't really think about it consciously at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like you make choices because your family might be proud of you, or that it's
Mm-hmm.
probably more financially provident, or condone to success, or it just looks good. It looks better. It looks right.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't even know what it has in store for you, but you think in a way that it'll make you more successful.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you want to do that for your family. And
Yeah.
of course you want it for yourself, but you're thinking of other people too. And I feel like that's a lot of growing up, and especially as a young adult and in your 20s. And I feel like there's just this moment where I don't know, for me, it really started started from the bottom and hitting that
Yeah.
kind of ceiling and questioning again, who am I doing all this for and why?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't up until that moment where it was just like I just didn't feel like I'd ever like I was doing anything for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew I was doing it and it was good for me, but I didn't at that point I didn't believe that it was what I wanted. I just felt like it was a good and right choice, or it was a good choice, but maybe not the choice I would make had I not been thinking about external reasons or people.
Mm-hmm.
It was just doing so much inner work. Again, a lot of reflecting, a lot of journaling, a lot of meditating, yoga, therapy, runs, swim. It really wasn't until a lot of those quiet and reflective moments that I started to hear myself. I'd always felt like maybe before last year, I heard myself, but I'd hear half of my senses.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the other half of me that I just honestly didn't know existed. And it was the path that, you know, wanted what was best for me, regardless of what is quote unquote good and successful.
Right.
And I had just never thought about the side of me that just wants. Like once I became conscious of that sense of self, it was almost like making a new friend. And it was a friend in me, and that friend was me. And it's like, I'd always thought that I'd loved myself, and I'd
Mhm.
always say that.
Yeah.
But, up until last year, I really didn't have any actions to prove it. If anything, all the actions and choices I'd made until then were not made in my best interest, went against me having more time, more flexibility for myself, went against me spending more quality time with family and friends. And honestly, were a lot of choices that benefited work and
Mm.
capitalism.
Mm.
I got to the point where I knew I had to balance what I want versus what is good for me.
Mhm.
Because I do believe both need to exist, because you could want anything, but not everything's good for you, right? And not
For
every
real.
lifestyle or choice is good either. But what
Mhm.
you want is important, and that needs to
Yes,
be on the table.
it
And it
does.
can't just be about what looks good on paper or what feels right by
Mhm.
your family and your values. For me, it was just that turning point of
Mm.
finding myself in a different way and
Mhm.
hearing myself in a different way. And honestly, for the first time, really respecting my voice. And even going back to what you were saying earlier, I feel like the whole topic and the real theme of this all, for me at least, is
Mhm.
really creating an ecosystem of balanced living. That's really it for me. Because yes, it was a lot of it had to do with the environment and connecting with the community,
Mhm.
but it was like it all started from a place of wanting to be in a place of better mental wellness. And
Mhm.
how did I do that? I started going outside more. I started paying attention to my body more. I started paying attention to my mind more. And I started balancing the things that I needed with the things that life called for. It's weird because I was just talking about community versus individualism, and tomorrow is very community. America,
Very
most
community.
would say, I think, is very individual. And I think that's why a lot of us here, especially, find ourselves in conflict, because
So
we
much
are
inner
being
conflict.
twisted in both. We're like
Mhm.
capitalist, we're taught capitalistic values, like do as much as you can for yourself to be successful and financially secure.
Mhm.
But in terms of tomorrow family and community, we're like, do that, but also share everything you have. Make sure that, you can't be doing so much better than the others and not help anyone.
Yeah.
You can't,
Why are you
you
being a
know,
show off?
yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
it,
Why are you
you have
doing the
to
most?
be in a perfect balance of that, or you're just selfish
Yeah.
or not doing good enough.
Just like we've normalized the landscape constantly changing and developing.
A product, honestly, of
Oh my,
colonization.
for
Absolutely.
real, both
Like
of it.
I mean, we talk about a lot of impacts of colonization, but as far as, I mean, there's so much that you could see today, but that is like such a primary one that I think so many people, especially our age,
Mm-hmm.
can relate to, because it's like we want all these things, but we also love our people and where we come from. And it's like, it can be hard to navigate wanting more for ourselves and not wanting to feel like we're betraying or abandoning our family and loved ones in any way.
Yeah.
We need a healthier balance of helping people become well adjusted individuals,
Yes.
but at the same time, people who care enough about their community to help
Yeah.
it become better, but
Mm-hmm.
not in a toxic way.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, the best balance of that.
Another call to action for you: where are places where you meet up with your friends? Where are places that you see family members, or places that you frequent so much that you have acquaintances in various of places? Think of these places as spaces on Guam that are your home, but they are also giving you a chance to make it a home for other people away from home. That could mean people in the diaspora, people of an immigrant status. Be sure that they feel at home too, because that is also a part of our genetics. And another way to do that is to make our endemic species feel like they are not being pushed away from the invasive species coming over and essentially taking over the sunlight where our endemic species are. Please keep in mind that the endemic species are the placeholders of our culture and our ancestors, and they are very much worth the space, and they loved our ancestors, and in turn, it could be very possible that the ecosystem that we have thrived with alongside for thousands of years loves us as well.
That felt good to say.
Oh my God.
I really feel lifted.
Fuck yeah, you are!
I would really love to design and live in a mostly outdoor space. Like the vibe would be very back kitchen, tin roof, uh, wood. Everything's wood. Yeah, big. But everything's like ceramics or like pottery. Yeah, earth. Yeah, water features. Like as much as possible, I want to live in an ecosystem. One of the things I think they've got right is parks. And I love national parks. And I've only visited a couple. I've been to Yosemite and I'm forgetting it off the top of my head, but the one with the giant redwoods in California. Yeah. Yeah, so I've been to those couple of parks, but I'm such a big fan and supporter of the Parks Project, nonprofit too. It's also like a parks brand. And I've always loved reading and researching national parks because it's like these are areas that we as people have, passed laws and policies to protect and to provide as an outdoor recreational space for in which people and the natural environment can coexist and experience each other almost and in a respectful way. And a lot of them have their own conservation projects ongoing. And so it's like I just think that's one of the one good aspect of America is the national parks. And it's like I wish that was something we looked at more here. I mean, it's like there are so many things to prioritize on the island that parks is like at the way bottom of the limit of the list. But it's like I wish we had more opportunities to take more community members out into like hiking spots and into remote areas, but also even just to create more outdoor public spaces here. Because it's like we have parks, but it's like, why don't we go to them? And it's like, they're not very nice. And they're not always very accessible. And they're rarely maintained, rarely have operating bathrooms, rarely have usable playground equipment for kids, rarely have walkable, maintained paths, are mostly eyesores and being reclaimed by the earth.
Our first call to action, being out in nature more. So when you're out in nature more, you can already feel so much relief, so much space in your personal, mental, and physical well-being. Even that breath of fresh air, if it's easily accessible to you with some plants around, of course, it feels so much more empowering. Even if you were able to make your own tea out of lemongrass, which is not endemic, but if you were to make your own tea out of endemic species or even find plants that are edible, it feels incredibly empowering. And something that we can connect on alongside nature is, where do Chamorros usually gather? I'm thinking of spaces that I grew up around, which is things like the Catholic Church or community events for school, fiestas and parties. And I think alongside the Chamorros' natural tendencies, we have been brought up and still continue through our genetics, want to do so much for other people more than ourselves. We seem to always want to help, to always be moving, to always know what is our job, how can we contribute, how can we keep going. So I would like to link this to, how does this working hard, reciprocity, taking care of each other go back to the land? And it goes beyond giving back to the land, recognizing and learning these endemic plants. It also means we have to reduce the amount of waste that we use. First barrier, the reason why we are not in tune with our endemic species anymore is because we are not finding connections, continuous connections with these endemic plants. Let's use the fiestas as an example. How can we connect to our endemic plants? We could incorporate it into our fiestas, and in turn, when we support our local endemic species, harvesting them, also making sure that there is enough for the next of days and seasons to come, we can reduce our plastic waste, our overconsumption of trash. With our issue of westernization and our need, our absolute biological need to take care of each other, we have some gaps within our information, our knowledge, the way we collect. So what I'm trying to say is that Guam is actually number 7 per capita in the whole world to produce the amounts of trash. So let's say we have 175,000 individuals living on Guam, including Chamorros, including people of the diaspora, our brothers and sisters in FSM and other places in Micronesia. We all collectively produce number 7 in the whole world by the tiny amount of land that we have, but the density of the population really makes a difference. So we are overusing the single-use plastics during our fiestas. We're using a lot of single-use plastics during our fiestas and our gatherings, and it's still creating those motions that our body really crave, like handing out the plates when our elders are not able to do it for themselves, or working to like set up the table. We're still having those rituals of togetherness that we had in our ancestral lineage so long ago that exist to this day. The motions of love and generosity, reciprocity, imaf malik, taking care of each other, is still being expressed through our need to connect, but is also filled in, westernization has filled in an information gap that I think our community of life is trying to tell us.
It's like we're living, some of us are living such fast-paced lives. Some of us, a lot of it online. Some of us, a lot of it in air-conditioned offices, in fluorescent lighting, in stiff clothes. And I don't want you to go out and sit next to a potted plant for 5 minutes hoping your life changes. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying go take, a 20, 30-minute walk on a nice, safe hike trail with some friends. Go and soak in the sun and take a moment, just a moment to stop, be still, and realize what it means to be alive and capture that feeling and try to let that influence how you move through your days. I love to walk around my house at night, like outside.
Oh,
Like I
beautiful.
live in there's a lot of plants and trees outside my house, and I'll literally walk around the house for like 10 minutes, and I'm not really talking, but I'm just looking and
Mhm.
listening and thinking. I love to look at the moon, at the stars. I love to look at this one coconut tree underneath a traffic light. It's a street lamp. Um, and it's so still. Sometimes it's in the wind, and it just reminds me how slow and smooth the world is actually moving and how fast sometimes we're moving. And I'm just like always wanting more and more to become part of that natural environment and to move at that pace, which is my own pace, and to know that that's what's natural, that's what's real, that's what's important. People are so caught up, and so many of us have anxiety and all these things weighing us down, and so many errands and checklists to take care of. But it's like I think even if we just took 5 to 10 minutes a day for ourselves, just to completely empty ourselves into whatever environment or atmosphere exists, but
Mhm.
ideally outside and in nature, I don't think we just realize how valuable that is. and how healing that is, and how that is a source of honestly fucking free therapy.
For real. That is straight up free therapy. Even just like feeling the texture of like another plant on your skin
Yeah.
is healing.
Yeah, I love to touch trees.
I'd love to touch
Oh, that
trees.
sounds weird, but it's like I'll always another tiny tidbit, but my favorite show of all time, like an actual big fan stan, is Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is
Yes.
obviously such a natural elements based
Yes.
show. And it's like I love to. Are you
Earth
familiar?
Nation.
I'm very Air Nation.
I'm very
I'm
Air
very Aang forward.
I admire the Earth Nation.
But you know when Aang's like touching the tree and he can see everything through the tree's vines and branches? Like that's how I like to feel when I'm touching trees. Like I touch the trees like that and I try to feel connected to the earth and everything the tree knows. And I'm like, even though that's from a show, I just can't help but feel like there's an ounce of authenticity in that because it's like we are connected. And it's like I may not be able to see my ancestors by doing that to a tree, but I can definitely feel connected to them because they might have used these trees medicinally or for canoes. And it's like, there's so much beauty in that. Because again, we're always moving so fast and we're making so many decisions in haste when we know what we want, we know what we need deep down. And too often, that layer is just clouded by everything that everybody else in the world is telling us that we need. But we know what we need. And I'm just the biggest advocate for people getting out in nature to hear themselves. Nature is our soul's soundboard. Bars. If there's anything you take away from this pod and learn from these fantastic tales from Tori and Tihu, it's that you need to connect with the earth more. You need to go sit in the tree more. You need to go sit on the sandy beach more. You need to go swim in the salty waters more. You need to go feel the rain on your skin, as Natasha Bedingfield, said. I also want to just give a quick shout out and huge thanks to Tori because she has been an absolute amazing host. She also sent such amazing, thoughtful, well intentioned questions to base this whole thing. And it's like, oh, you've been a tremendous host. Thank you so much. All the love, all the lights to us light workers.
To the light workers.